It's a people carrier, it's an extended family car, and for some even my age, it's a party bus. Yes, I'm talking about the new VW Caravelle. And that's the car that's behind me right now. As you can see, they've changed quite a lot, namely the lights. Although subtle, the exterior change to the new Caravelle adds to its modern look. And if we think about it, there are very little things you can do with something that resembles a box. So the fact that VW have made a box look good is a good achievement. In typical VW fashion, it carries a very distinct VW look in the front, so one wouldn't mistake it for anything other than a Caravelle. Electric sliding doors on both sides, as I've just demonstrated. But looking inside the Caravelle, you can see that this is actually a very nice place to be in. It looks like someone's living room. Well, my living room, because my living room is tiny, but for this car, it's quite big. Looking at the chairs of this Caravelle as well, we've got a nice setup. For instance, 2 armrests for once. It's quite awkward always sitting with one armrest because you're always going to be lopsided. Whereas in this car, you've got 2, so you're going to be comfortable for that road trip. And then, something I quite like is this. Because we all know how terrible it is to be sitting that way when this car's going this way, and you get car sick, because that's going to generally end badly. Now, I grew up in a number of Caravelles and Kombis and all types of vehicles with this kind of shape. And we had a #1 rule in the car: do not eat in the vehicle. But I wish I grew up in this era, because I would have turned back and looked at my parents and said, "But Mom and Dad, look, VW wants me to eat in this car." As you can see, I've got a table. As we mentioned, this is a car that most of us have grown up with. VW have had this shape for a very long time. But over the years, of course, competitor brands are going to try to create something similar. And there's one thing that VW has always won over, which is interiors. And looking at the interior of the new Caravelle, they really haven't disappointed us in any way. I don't feel like I'm in a car that could potentially carry lots of passengers in a business kind of way. This feels like a family car. The interior is fantastic. I mean, I've got a touchscreen radio, I've got nice shiny piano black bits, and I've got the wonderful DSG gearbox at the same time. What's nice about this new Caravelle is that the inside is functional. Oftentimes, many manufacturers make the mistake of making their systems and their dashboards too complicated. Whereas with this car, you know exactly what everything does and what everything is supposed to do. And that's always been the essence of VW, keeping it simple. And that's something we see in this new Caravelle. The new VW Caravelle drives as comfortably as it looks, especially on an open road. One does have to be careful though when you're in the city, because you do have a lot of car behind you. That being said though, the car still doesn't feel quite intimidating behind the wheel. One thing that must be noted about the new Caravelle is how quiet the cabin is inside. This is the case if you're driving on a bumpy road or on a silky smooth highway. The silence of the cabin can be attributed to the great fit and finish that is almost rattle-proof. The 2-litre bi-turbo diesel in the car is the same one that is in the Amarok. In fact, since we have the 4Motion system fitted in this car shares more features with the Amarok than one would think. And even though it's only a 2-litre, one may think that this engine's quite small for this car, but with 132 kilowatts, the car's ample power for its size. The 4Motion system may not be applicable to many, but for those who are quite adventurous, it may come in handy, especially with the diff lock function. All this, for a standard price of 870,000 Rand, may not seem quite cheap, but considering the competition in these cars, all the cars are quite expensive. But for that price, the Caravelle is still cheaper than most luxury SUVs, and I personally would opt for this type of car because you can just do so much more with it whilst having your family and friends and their friends with you. So after driving the new Caravelle, we have to ask ourselves, has a lot changed between this car and the old one? Well, no, not really. But that's not a bad thing, because the Caravelle's always been a good car. These guys have had a long time to actually perfect this model, and it's quite difficult to do any better than what they've already done. That being said though, for this car's purpose, taking people comfortably in a car for a long trip, it does exactly what it needs to do. You know, we speak about performance and we speak about other things, but that's not really that important when it comes to this car. When you're on a long road and you can sit down and enjoy a newspaper with that table, we can say that the Caravelle really does a good job indeed.